We should never allow the government to decide what is acceptable speech and what is unacceptable speech. We should penalize behaviors, not opinions, and not speech. If you start trying to regulate speech, you start trying to regulate thoughts, you start trying to regulate beliefs rather than behaviors, there's no way that you're not going to abridge the constitutional rights of millions of Americans.
Children have one thing in common. All of them were unplanned pregnancies. Pregnancies that could have ended in abortion. But their parents toughed it out, listened to their hearts, and discovered along the way that sometimes the best things in life aren't planned. Life. What a beautiful choice.
I'm going to be talking today about something that everybody probably watched on the news in the last couple of days about the Senate hearings regarding Brett Kavanaugh's nomination to be placed as the next U.S. Supreme Court Justice. And I think when you saw all the hearing menagerie going on between them putting down Kavanaugh and who he is, it isn't about him being anything of a sexual predator. It is about him standing against what is, in the simplest terms, murder. Murder is what abortion is all about. And see, they don't want to place somebody in the Supreme Court who even resembles Justice Scalia. He's the one that died a few years back. And they wanted to get somebody in there, this is when Obama was still president, who could continue the philosophy that abortion is not only legal, but that it is morally correct. I've done videos now about Pope Francis, and I think if you don't know how he stands as a Jesuit about gay marriage, if you don't know how he stands about homosexuality, you ought to really start doing your own research to see what do and what did the Jesuits stand by throughout history. Their philosophy was that the Pope was the highest ranking individual in the Vatican, and that it did not matter what you did as a Jesuit, you had to stand by his philosophies and his decisions, including murdering people, executing, whatever they had to do as a group, they did it. Look at the movie series Shogun. Jesuits were actually in charge of the highest, richest market of silk and other products during the time of the early settlers and the early missionaries went to China. And the Jesuits controlled all of that. And then go forward in time to present day, and the day that Francis was voted in as a pope. He told the world that he was going to abandon every single thing that the Bible had always taught, not only about excommunication in the Catholic Church, but also about homosexuality, gay marriage, everything the Bible has always pronounced as being an abomination to God. Pope Francis abolished those philosophies. He said, I am no longer going to authorize myself to stand by what the Bible teaches. And that's God's word. So you are committing the most heinous apostasy against God when you stand against what his holy word tells you. Now let's switch from the Pope, who stands for the same philosophies that Obama does, to this constant attack in the United States against Trump himself. Trump has been heckled, harassed, condemned, constantly bashed by the Democratic Party since the very day that he was inaugurated as president in 2017. And the reason for that hatred that continually comes out is because the Democratic Party, whether you want to believe this or not, is a communist socialist group. It is a regime that Obama began in 2008 when he became president of the United States. And why, to this day, the Democrats are the overshadowed voice in Washington, D.C. as the most powerful of both parties. There might be more Republicans in the Senate than there are Democrats, but that does not mean they hold the power, because everything and any time Trump does something, if you notice, the Democratic Party seems to have this level of authority that overclouds the issue, whatever it might be, and they have been able to manipulate, alter, do every and anything they can against Trump. And the Brett Kavanaugh issue is the most, what I call the most watched event showing this power event about the Democratic Socialist Communist Party going against somebody that stands for what Trump is about. And that is bringing decency back into the United States itself, bringing morality back into our country, because that is what America was founded to be in 1776. People, especially atheists, and atheists are the number one group of religious mouthpieces who spoke for this country during the 8 years that Obama was president. They have been destroying the philosophies of our country and how we lived as a nation for more than 200 years. And now, in the past 10 years that Obama was president, he destroyed morality, he destroyed normalcy in this country, he destroyed everything about our country that made us great. That is why now everybody hates America. They put us down. It's not because of Trump, it's because of what Obama did during his 8 years. He destroyed what was the decency that made up America as a country, as a nation. Brett Kavanaugh is the one person the Democrats hate as much as Trump himself, because Kavanaugh stands against abortion. That's really the key issue about putting a U.S. Supreme Court justice in office. Kavanaugh is the only man that can bring back decency to America, because you have individuals in the U.S. Supreme Court today, like John Edwards and others who Obama put in office. Key example of how Obama has manipulated and destroyed our whole judicial system. When Edwards came to power as the U.S. Supreme Court Justice, he did something no court judge has ever tried to do, because it's illegal. He changed the wording of the law that made up Obamacare. And here's what's significant. The senators told him that by law he didn't have that right. But guess what? He still was able to change the law, because he said, as Supreme Court Justice, it was his right and it was his choice, even though the Constitution says a Supreme Court Justice has no legal grounds to change any law that the Senate or the Congress passes. And now you have this scenario of Brett Kavanaugh being condemned by the Democratic Socialist Communist Party, and they're on the warpath to destroy any person who stands for what's decent, who stands for what's right about our country. And that's why they constantly go against Donald Trump, because he's what is right, what is good about America. And that's why they don't want him in office. That's why they're harping about midterm elections. They figure if we get enough people who are Democrats in the Congress, we can evoke the 25th Amendment and have Trump kicked out. They can impeach him. And I have to ask, why didn't they do this sort of thing against Bill Clinton? They found out he was a sexual predator, and yet nothing ever happened about him. And I remember hearing some people say, well, after they had impeached Richard Nixon back in the 70s, they said, we cannot ever impeach another president because of the turmoil that was created by this shakeup within the political system itself. When we had to get Richard Nixon out, and then you had Gerald Ford, who was placed in the position as president. He pardoned Richard Nixon. And people really didn't like Gerald Ford, but they had to because it was the law. Well, they said, we'll never do that again because of the turmoil it will create within the United States. Now, here is another question mark that I have to put to you as the actual viewer of this video. Don't you think the Democrats want chaos in the United States? Don't you think they want to create even more incitement and hatred? Because you see a pattern forming of hatred against the races themselves. The blacks are arrogantly projecting themselves being superior, being better. And maybe this is what the Democrats' whole plan is. Create a total chaotic scenario within the United States that pretty much has to force the government to initiate martial law. And then you never would have to worry again about the president leaving office, because under the stipulation of martial law, he would never have to leave. The stipulation under the United States Constitution is if a president is in office during an emergency situation where martial law is instigated, the terms or any limitations to his actual presidency ends, and he can stay forever. Now, if you have Obama coming back in office during a stipulation of a martial law situation, then the Democrats have it scot-free because they'll never worry again about Obama leaving office. Why is Obama wanting to come back? Because as the Antichrist and as the Mahdi, his position has to start from the highest seated position in the United States government system, and then it would permeate all over the world as being the head of the United Nations Security Council. He would instigate what the Bible and Revelations has talked about since beginning of time, which is the Antichrist would mock God, he would condemn Christians and have them executed. The United States, if not the world, would be under a global government control system that would force narcotics on society. And Obama did that when he was president. He made all drugs legal. All things that were considered illegal, like marijuana and heroin, he made it legal. And it's all a part of his plan. So you see the Democrats doing the things they're doing, you think, who gives them the authority to do that? Well, who is Obama's father? Satan. Lucifer controls the world. So if he's giving Obama power, he's giving the Democrats power. If you give the Democrats power, then you only have one outcome, and that is that Lucifer's New World Order, Lucifer's condemnation of Christianity, his inevitable power struggle between himself and Jesus Christ, who is the Son of God, would then come to total fruition, because the Bible says that in the end times, Satan would use his Antichrist and his false prophet to laugh at God, to condemn the world to living for Satan instead of God, And this is the apostasy that even the Bible talks about, that people would eventually abandon God, they would abandon religion altogether. Hillary Clinton, during the election of 2016, told people over and over again, we must abolish religion. We must end religion. She said that over and over again before the actual election itself. And why do I bring that up? Because Hillary Clinton and Obama are both for the same outcome. They want to destroy America. Thank the Lord she didn't win. If she had, then I'd say probably the tribulation would already be in full effect already. Trump being elected kind of postpones what the Bible has told us will inevitably it will happen. The destruction of our country, the destruction of this world. And I brought this up at the beginning of my video. Pope Francis is a Jesuit. He is what the Bible calls the false prophet. And if you know anything of the studies of Nostradamus, Nostradamus said that after Schlesinger, Benedict XVI, when he left, he would not have one other successor beyond the last pope himself, and that is, he called him Peter, but in reality, it's actually Francis. Francis is the last pope. And anybody in the study of our history as a world has seen there has never been an abdicate. There's never been a pope who abdicated during the time that he was alive. The abdication of Benedict XVI proves that there is no other time before or after that something has happened so significantly within the church itself than when Pope Francis became the now ruling papacy. And he's a Jesuit. Jesuits have always had one stipulation, and that is the destruction of anything and everything except that the Pope controls everything that they get their hands on, possessions, money, property. It's all about control within the actual Jesuit structure of everything except the Pope himself is supposed to be the highest ranking individual within the structure of the Vatican Church. And I would recommend you watch the other video I did. It's called Pope Francis, Why, as a Jesuit, the End of Time Has Come. I didn't name it that, but I would say go back and look for Pope Francis on my channel, and you'll see over an hour and a half's worth of the sermon that was done about the history of Jesuits and what they have done since the beginning of time itself, since they were created. And there are very many quick, if not indirect, references to Freemasonry, how it is linked to Jesuits, how the Vatican itself is the highest financial institution in the world because of how they control money, how they manipulated world history, because the Jesuits kind of like are a off-branch of the Templars, and the Templars were the ones who, during Middle Age time, were going after certain articles, other artifacts that had direct references to Israel. They were looking for the Holy Grail. They were looking for the Ark of the Covenant. They were looking at all of these different things that have direct references to God on earth, and the fact that Israel is his chosen people. And the Templars were trying to find these artifacts, not to preserve them, but to control them, because that's why the Ark of the Covenant disappeared. The Ark of the Covenant as an artifact, as an actual historical object, anybody who controlled the Ark controlled at least what happened as far as themselves. You know, because God resided in the Ark of the Covenant. I'm not saying if somebody found the Ark of the Covenant, they could control God. You can't do that. he knows who you are. So if you ever did get possession of the Ark of the Covenant, he'd probably wipe you out, because he knew that his people were the ones that he chose, and that's why he gave them the Ark of the Covenant and nobody else. And then all of a sudden it disappeared. Well, now they say that the Ark of the Covenant is actually still in Ethiopia, and that once Israel is recreated as a people who actually now have their own temple, they figure the Ethiopians are going to release the Ark of the Covenant back to the Jews. And then this is probably when definitely Obama will already have taken up residence in the temple he's going to build there, and that's how it's going to end. He'll come right out of the temple. He'll say he's going to mock God. He's going to condemn all Christians. He's going to advocate for a global jihad, because Muslims believe in the Mahdi. They don't believe that Jesus was the Son of God. They don't believe Jews should exist, because in their minds they think it's about themselves. It's not about anybody else. It's about them. And Obama, in every aspect of his presidency, proved he was and he is a Muslim, because that's the only people he hired for key positions relating to foreign relations with other nations. And today, even though he may not be right there in your face, in front of the cameras, he's still doing whatever it is he's planning for this country, for the world. And the Democrats are showing us little itty-bitty, minute clues, glimpses of what his plans are. So keep watching the Socialist Democratic Party, the Communist Party, because the more they do with Brett Kavanaugh, the more they do in every aspect of American life, the faster Obama's plan becomes reality. Thank you.
They've reported from around the world, challenged the powerful, and they bring all of this to every story that breaks.
We've got breaking news, and it's good news.
And touches your heart.
How do you even say thank you? Thank you is not big enough.
I made this. shocks the world. Relentless bombings. Stunned survivors.